a quick bio on your Air Force career, how you got to where you are and where you're going?
Yeah, you bet. And first of all, I just want to say I'm happy to be here. Sorry I was 30 seconds late, but I was in the enlisted force distribution panel for an hour, hour and a half maybe, which is critical, right? Because it does come back to officership. Is Chief of Staff says, promote what you value, value what you promote. And that is a forum for the enlisted corps of, the commander gets some input to say, hey, these are the right people we're promoting. These are the values that we're promoting, right? So that's what I was doing. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you. Hopefully you've got your favorite morning beverage. I've got mine. Just straight black coffee. Some people got water. I see some healthy shakes or with smoothies, whatever they're called. But I just want to say thanks for doing this. And I've said this before about strengths and weaknesses. A lot of people think that strength and weaknesses is really just what you're good at or what you're bad at. But the more time I've been in the seat as a commander, for me, it's what gives me energy and what zaps my energy, right? And hanging out with the officers and having a discussion like this gives me a lot of energy. And based on the week that we've had with the DUI and everything, I'm really looking forward to this because this gives me my energy back. And this is why I joined. So to your original question, I went to University of Wisconsin, Madison. So Badger, I did ROTC there. It was really a place that made me who I am. I think it made me grow, and I owe a lot to that institution, which is why I probably sport more Wisconsin shit. And that leadership, that just ability to relate to people at a big university really was influential in me. So I did ROTC, I did political science, international relations, and Russian there. And then from there I got commissioned and went backpacking in Europe. So I took 6 weeks off and traveled all through Europe. I flew into St. Petersburg, Russia, and left out of Rome. And we took a train everywhere with just a backpack. I was a casual lieutenant. We're going to get some of those this summer. So I spent, I think, 9 months at Offutt, which was awesome. The first couple months, I went to the gym. I checked in. I maybe worked a half day. I was in an OSS. I didn't even know what they did. And then one day I'm there, and
She invited me to his party. Can I join?
yeah, go ahead. Join Lucci on Xbox. That's a small word from our sponsors, Cosmo would say. And here comes the dog because he left the door open. Anyhow, so then 9/11 happened, and like that, things changed. We had, you guys still with me? You seem frozen, or is it me?
We got your audio. I think your video froze. Or maybe the audio too.
I think the Xbox just took down his bandwidth.
That's what I was thinking.
Where did I cut out for you guys?
9/11 happened.
Yeah, 9/11 happened. So I had a TS clearance, and they said, hey, no more half days, bro. You're going to do 12-hour shifts. You're going to work nights in an Intel Vault because you have a TS, and you're going to produce a DISUM, a daily intelligence summary. So you're going to look at all this classified stuff, and you're going to have a one-page report synthesizing it for the colonel at 06 when he walks in. You're a political science major. You can do this. And I said, holy shit, okay. But you wanted to do it. You were in that moment. I mean, it was a surreal moment to be a part of, to see Air Force One land at Offutt Air Force Base, to be an officer at that time. It really, another one of those inflection points that's kind of just formed my career and said, hey, this is why I serve. This is why I care so much, is because I've seen how it affects our nation and the impact we can have. All right, so fast forward, went to UPT Advanced. That was great. From there, C-21s at Peterson. Yes, C-21 Mafia. I think, is it Space Force now, Peterson? I don't even know. But see, I never predicted that as a lieutenant, that my first squadron would be part of the Space Force, or the base would. So Learjets was a lot of fun, a lot of good flying. And then I went '06 to Dover, flew C5s there for quite some time. Got to know a lot of good people at Dover. And then from Dover, I don't know, did you guys have opportunity to see what I posted on Slack real quick for this session? I've told some of you this story, but I think it's worth repeating. I got pulled in the wing commander's office, and they're like, hey, so you want to be a RAS, this regional affairs strategist, which is now called a FAO, a foreign area officer. That's not good for your career, and we really think you should do reach and go fly tankers. And I said, okay, that's not what I want to do. And they're like, no, you don't want to do this RAS thing because it's going to hurt your career. I said, copy, but that's what I'm good at, and that's what I want to do. So I turned down applying for Phoenix Reach and applied for RAS. So I got picked up, and it was just a personal decision, right? I talked about it with my wife, and I just know that's one of my strengths. Again, it gives me energy. I follow this stuff on Twitter. I'm constantly looking at what's going on in the world. So I had the opportunity to go to Defense Language Institute for a year of 8 hours of Russian and get advanced Russian. Then I went on a 6-month immersion to Ukraine, Russia, and Georgia. And I got to travel around Donetsk and Crimea while I was still part of Ukraine. Still is de jure, but de facto part of Russia. And then I came back and did the Naval Postgraduate School. So I wore civilian clothes, and we had every Friday off for a year. So that sucked, in Monterey, California. And then, so two years in Monterey, it was really tough running up and down the beach. And then, what did I do? Well, yeah, UCOM. Then they said, hey, you're going to go to U.S. European Command and live in Stuttgart. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do that. I went to Stuttgart, and that's right when Russia annexed Crimea. I would tell you there was very little expertise in Russia. I think I was the only officer on staff that actually spoke Russian. Whoa, and that's the command in charge of Russia, by the way. They've got people there now, but and they're like, hey, you're going to end up being the lead planner for the Russia problem set, which I will tell you was intellectually probably the best thing I've ever done. So I was on a team of four people, and I got a plan order from the joint staff, and we had a blank word screen that says write a level 4 O plan. Fast forward a year and a half later, the plan is over 1,000 pages. You've got all the 3-letter agencies. You've led this team to build a plan. And I got to travel with the SAC here, the Supreme Allied Commander of Europe, twice to brief the Secretary of Defense on the plan. So talk about just making impact and, growing just, opportunity and kind of study and how all those things just kind of intersected. And from there, I got a phone call one day. I was in the middle of leading a team on a VTC, a classified VTC, a JWIX VTC, right? Even TS classification. And they're like, hey, guy, there's some colonel from Travis that says he needs to talk to you. And I was like, okay. So I stopped, someone else took over the briefing, went out, and they're like, hey, we want you to come be the DO of the 22nd. I was like, awesome, I'm in. I get to Travis, and they're like, yeah, you're not going to be the DO of the 22nd. You're going to go to the OSS and be the DO there. And I was like, okay. So I did that. I learned a lot about leadership, and it really shifted my mind because, I've been reading a lot about strategy and deterrence and escalation at UCOM. I get to the OSS, and the first weekend I'm the DO, we had a sergeant go AWOL, right? And I'm like, AWOL? This is really happening? And this happened over and over in the OSS. So I learned a lot about that type of leadership, progressive discipline, and then the privilege of a lifetime, which sadly is going to end in 45 days. I'm not going to get emotional today, but is to be a co-captain on this team. It has been probably the most rewarding, most challenging, but like anything, anything complex that you love, it's just awesome. So I could not be more thrilled to have had the opportunity to do this. So that's kind of the career in a nutshell.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. From previous OPDs, I compiled a laundry list of questions. So I know people out there have a lot of questions relating to deployments and assignments and things like that. Um, if it gets slow, I got a few things I could throw out there to spark discussion. But I think, particularly for this one, I'm just gonna kind of open it up to the floor and let people throw out any general questions they have about career type stuff. So take it away. Don't be shy.
So this is Jeffrey Wanch. I just have one quick question on the FAO part. So kind of like the whole timeline thing, because I speak Spanish fluently and I'm really interested in that stuff. But seeing as being a pilot is like my second assignment and I'm just starting off being a pilot, my hours are pretty low. When is it like too late to go the FAO route or too early to go the FAO route, I guess is my question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, right? So here's just considerations. I mean, obviously we can do a deep dive together, and that's what I recommend. Deep dive with the chief pilot, myself, work through some timelines. But just kind of the framework is you want to be an instructor in an MWS. Once you have that ticket, I think you have the credibility to go off a beaten path, go off the grid like Jason Bourne, and do something different. But going off the grid without that experience is dangerous because, unlike the Army, once you split FAO in the Army, you stay FAO the whole rest of your career, and you never come back to infantry or to armor, right? And they promote within that career path. In the Air Force, we're dual track. So they're going to say, go do a FAO assignment, go broaden yourself, and get a little bit of depth, right? Because you're going to get a master's degree in a region, in an area, and speak a language. But then you have to have the credibility to come back and lead a squadron, either as a DO or as a commander, hopefully. I say hopefully just because that's a potential. To do that, you had to have been an instructor with some instructor hours previously. So that's kind of the short answer. Any other specific follow-ups there?
No, I think that kind of aligns it very well for me. So thank you.
And yeah, one thing I also thought of is, I think the Air Force got it right by slowing down or getting rid of below the zone. I think there's still we need to adjust the windows slightly, and they're working that. But giving you more time, to get some expertise, it should give you more options. So they really want to make FAO something that is on par with like a Phoenix program, right? Where it's valued. You're going to get IDE credit for doing it. And now you just have that much more of a talented officer with depth and breadth, because it's hard to have both. And that's been that say-do gap that the Air Forces have. They say they want breadth and they say they want depth. Well, depth, you need some expertise. It takes time to get depth. You can't just shit that. So you have to be able to spend some time studying. And by getting rid of this and expanding that window, it allows our officer corps to probably close that say-do gap, get depth and breadth where they want to.
Thank you, sir.
Good question. Who's next?
I got a question for you, sir. We're spending a lot of time at home. Gives us a lot more free time to work on personal development. What would you say is a top priority for us to work on right now? What kind of distance learning or other kinds of things should we or can we focus on that you think would give us the most personal growth that we could just do during this time?
Right. So you're broken on my end. It's probably my kid playing Xbox with his friends. So let me rephrase the question, make sure I got it. You're asking is, we got a lot of free time. What can we do with this free time to grow professionally? Is that kind of what you asked?
Basically, sir, yes. Just what do you think is the best use of all of this extra free time that we've suddenly been given?
Yeah. So I think a lot of that would depend on your personality, right? There's no one size fits all here. Um, but I come down to my personal mantra that helps me, and then I would take a version of that and tailor it for you, right? So read, write, run, and reflect, right? So you got to do something active, right? Because if you just stay holed up in your hole and sear, and I mean, you're in, I don't want to get into anything classified, but like you got to get out. You got to go psychologically, all the studies, Harvard Business Review, doing something physical, even if you're slow. Like I'm part of the Strava running group, and some of the speed killers on there amaze me. But I'm plugging away on distance because I would tell you it makes me feel better, right? If there's anxiety or depression or any of that going on, which certainly there might be, doing something physical kind of clears your mind, right? So do something physical. Now the read, again, these don't have to be literal, even though like Kramer, I like alliteration. So reading is whatever way you learn, go get some, right? To quote Jocko Willink, go get some. Find a podcast that you haven't been listening to and reflect on that. When's the last time you read a book? You know what I mean? And I'm sure people are constantly reading, and there are people, those who have not picked up a book. I'd say if you're not picking up a book right now, you're probably in the Air Force, you're wrong category, right? There's an opportunity to do some reading. And it could be literature. It could be it could be completely fiction, right? But there's a lot to be learned from fiction and growing. So I would encourage people to do some type of reading. Writing for me is a higher level of thinking, and it's a great way to communicate without misinterpreting or playing the telephone game. Because if you can write clearly and powerfully and put your words down, then you can get that out and say, hey, these are my higher level thoughts. So I would challenge the flight leadership, to have a note every week that they write their, like all call notes or something, that they write their flights and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about as a flight commander this week or as a leader this week, right? Put that in writing. Here are my concerns. Here are my unknowns. I mean, it's okay to show vulnerability in that, but to me as a leader, that will help you grow by challenging yourself to write. Loftus asked me on my 1 year reflection, what could we do, or where would I challenge you guys the most? And I think my reply was something to the fact that, hey, we're doing great with the pilot aspect. But the better leader you are, the better individual, the better human being you are, the better pilot you're going to be, right? So these things are absolutely symbiotic. So if you're growing that way by reading and learning, you're going to be a better pilot. So I think that just complements yourself. And then reflect, right? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they're like, hey, is experience the end all be all? And the answer is absolutely not, because then all the old people would be the smartest people. But they're not, right? There are a lot of people who have had experiences and they don't learn from it. So you have to evaluate your own experiences and you have to reflect upon them. And then if you take a book and you take someone else's experiences, overlay that, and then you reflect on that, you could live 10 lives of mistakes by reading biographies. So to me, that's personally how I would kind of grow professionally in this moment in a healthy way, right? To Cosmo's point in his podcast about balance, harmonize, harmony, whatever works. And some people, there's more spiritual aspect, or maybe it's a meditation aspect. I mean, there's all different ways to kind of talk about this in this time, but there's no right answer. But I would say do something. Don't just kind of wallow in your PJs all day. You definitely want to get out. You want to be active, and grow and challenge each other. That'd be my take. Anyone have other thoughts? Because I think that's a great question for not just me, but for some other folks here and how you're doing. Drew Bateman, I'll pick on you. How are you growing professionally right now?
So I'm a big structure guy. So my days look really similar. I probably have the same thing for breakfast every day. And then I put on the YouTube channel and hit a workout in the morning. And then I start crushing work. But I've got a very short attention span, so I can probably crush work for about an hour. And then I need a break to kind of do something else. You kind of mentioned reading right now. Most of my reading's articles. The last book I read was fiction, and so I try to balance like a book of fiction and then keep myself up current by reading articles. I've got my Flipboard that tends to serve me up the content that I'm into. Lately, because I now have the time to do it, I've been writing a lot. So every Friday, it's funny you mentioned that. Every Friday on my flight, I always do kind of a week wrap up. Hey, this is what we dealt with this week. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I'd like you to reflect on this weekend. And I realize most of my day is spent in meetings, and I owe my flight to kind of trickle down that information. So it's my chance to kind of take the 12 meetings that I've been attending all week, distill that down into something chewable, 5 paragraphs max, and then kick that out on Friday at about 3:30. And that gives, everybody something to kind of reflect on over the weekend and cage themselves for the future. The most recent writing experience that I'm currently working through is more related to my job, technically. So we had a eval that started that shouldn't have ever happened, and walking that judgment, the AFI guidance that backs it up, and coming up with a coherent argument is super challenging, because trust and believe, the enlisted force expects everything you do to be routed, or like to be grounded in AFI, not because this is what you think, or this is what you know, or this is what you feel. It all needs to come back to a foundation. So it's taken me probably 8 days to kind of chew through that decision, which I still stand by. It was the right call. But now doing the hard work, which is going back and like getting into the Vol 1, the Vol 2, the Vol 3, the syllabus, putting all that information out. I finally realized that I was tired of like telling the same thing to people over and over and over again. And I figured, hey, if I can just distill my thoughts onto paper, make it coherent, send that out, then other people can carry that message. Definitely something I've, as I look back at my last year in Stanival, I should have done a lot earlier, is put that thought to paper and then put that paper out there as guidance. So, that's what's exciting about all the jobs that we get in the Air Force, and kind of that trajectory is you're going to be put in different roles that are going to be a different opportunity for you to grow. So when you're an exec, you're going to get really good at admin work, but let me be honest, it's going to make you a terrible leader. And then you're gonna go and be a flight commander, which means, hey, I can kind of fall back on some of those admin writing skills that I learned, but now put that rubber to the road and kind of put all that into practice and grow as a leader, which requires a completely different skill set. So kind of tying it back into the officer development piece, like each job is a development opportunity. Read, write, run, reflect. That's a good foundation that you can kind of bend and tailor to whatever job you're doing. There'll be certain jobs where you're going to be reading and researching a lot more. There's going to be, I'm looking back at my lieutenant days where you just have a lot of time to run and reflect, because you just don't, you're not in meetings all day. You're not leading yet. So yeah, that's my 2 bits on kind of what I'm doing to keep myself growing and engaged during all this quiet time.
That makes sense to me. So yeah, I mean, the one thing about writing, and I'm putting this together, I have a sheet here, a cheat sheet that I use when I write. And I think I'll put that out probably for the officers, at the very least, right? This is what I think about when I write, to make sure it's impactful and not too long, right? Because the shorter it is, the better it is, for sure. All right.
That's something I'm challenged with right now, is concision. Like keeping things concise is probably the hardest thing, whether it be spoken word or written communication. Like, man, that's a skill. If you can knock that out, you can be a great communicator.
And just to close up on your point, Ralph, like it's not just writing, right? It's communicating. So like a lot of times I have to work on my, ability to speak publicly, right? So that's and if you do all the different ways of communicating, you're going to hit all the different types of learners. Some people like reading. They want to read something on the road. That's why we do an op-ord. It's concise. We try to keep it concise, impactful. Sometimes there's, notes to the team. Sometimes you got to record like Cosmo does. I love his OPD sessions. And some people learn better that way, right? So I've seen it all. And I think the important thing is to find what works for you and keep growing in this time, because it's an opportunity to really grow and take the time that we have and tailor it to yourself. All right.
Thank you, sir.
This actually just made me think, just to fill a little bit of the dead space, about another thing that I'm doing now more diligently than I did prior, growing as a leader, is throughout your career, you should do your best to steal the good pieces of every single leader you work with, and then file that away however you want to file it. Earlier this week, we had a cert board, and I asked Colonel Pollock for his notes that he gives, that he runs through during his cert board speech. I've got a COVID-19 journal where every day I'm kind of keeping track of things that are working well, things that are not. In the middle of the all call that we had earlier this week for the DUI, I was like furiously taking notes because you never know when you're going to have to step up and be a commander someday, or have to deliver that message. And the last thing you want to do is shoot from the hip. It's really easy to remember who did something great. But this might be an opportunity right now where you can take some time, start a journal, start filing it away. I've got an iPhone list of the good, the bad, the ugly. So if I need to deal with the situation, I can just go back to my notes and be like, oh man, I remember when Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed, and that was a disaster. Here's how you should and shouldn't handle this situation. And that maybe some of those lessons apply to something that I'm dealing with right now. Or one of my airmen just failed for PT tests. Like how do I handle that? While you got some downtime, start a journal, start some notes in whatever form you can, because I guarantee you it's going to be helpful throughout your career.
Oh, yeah, very good insight. And probably the one thing that I would not take, just challenge you on a little bit would be the execs piece, right? Because if you're an exec for the right leader, it may be beneficial, right? Which is to say, and I try to do this for my execs, and sometimes I do fail, but I look for how to develop them as being part of my inner circle, right? So it's not just about pushing admin for an exec. For me, they're an extension of my decision-making apparatus. They have the eyes and the ears of the commander, but not the mouth, right? So I really, unless I'm forbidden by AFI or by some legal like OSI thing, I try to involve them in every decision that I can and help them grow. Sometimes even have them be in the room during an Article 15 or an LOR. So the exec is the extension of the commander, and you get that experience at the squadron level. Now, if you go to the group or wing, depending on the leader, they may not include you in that. But for me, I think the value of being an exec is decision making, right? And developing, and so that when you go from a squadron exec to a flight commander, you were behind the door with the commander 80% of the time, and you saw the thinking that went on in the squadron, and you can apply that as a flight commander. But that's just, I think that's very situationally dependent, but just what I try to do.
And also just to reiterate what Drew was saying about write down an experience and how something went poorly or how something went well. With this whole DUI thing, this is kind of my second time being in command of a flight with someone who's been busted with some sort of substance. My first flight command gig on day 3, which was the Monday, because I found out Friday, all right, hey, you're going to be a flight commander. Came back Monday, and over the weekend, I guess someone had gotten busted with his or taken his wife's pain pills. And so day 3 of flight command, I had to start dealing with that. It was with Master Sergeant. So I spent a lot of time sitting in the flight commander's office, or in the squadron commander's office, kind of taking notes that he had from the prior situations where he had to deal with stuff like that. And it kind of tailored how I communicated with that individual throughout that entire situation. And that's kind of helped me a lot dealing with this one right now. It's been a little bit different and you tweak here and there, but it's actually helped me a lot being able to go back and reflect on those notes. All right, this is what I said to this individual. Here's kind of how that played out. So whether or not it's good or bad, it's good to have those reflections to go back on. And as an example, and Paul just showed it, here's my 4th one of these. I bought a massive pack of 20 something of them. I think it was like 24 of these little books. And I'm going to carry them around for a long time because it's going to take a while to go through 24 of them. But within 2 years, I'm already on number 4. And 3 of them have been since I've been to Travis. So it's just maybe writing in a notebook isn't everyone's method. We all have phones that are essentially a bottomless notebook. But it is something that I suggest you pick up, because no matter how trivial it might seem, there's always going to be a situation where you can draw from that experience. Whether or not it's I made a huge mistake in handling it this way, or this really worked. But I do caution that you can't draw back on that experience and handle the new one in the exact same way, because there's always something different with every situation that you're coming across.
Yeah, for sure. And I just, as a show, I've kept every notebook since SOS. And some of them I keep at the office because they're still pertinent. I'm going back right from this job. But for me, there's a lot of power in writing, even though it's chicken scratch. Like, here are my FDP notes. But I have them, I date them, I can go back and be like, this is what I said during a promotion. When I was struggling, when Wynn passed away, I was with Joey, and I had to call his spouse and let her know. And so I didn't have all my notebooks, but I took a legal pad that I got from the front desk, and I wrote out everything that I think I should say. And then I called the chaplain on call, and I said, hey, chaplain, I've never done this. What do you think I should say and not say? What are the things you don't say in this moment? And then I wrote that down. And I flipped pages, and I called someone else, another commander that I'd known that had lost somebody. I said, bro, in that moment, what did you say? And then I wrote that down, and I compiled on a legal pad just a framework, because I knew it was going to be extremely emotional. Typically, you try to do these things in person, but because of the distance, the spouse was in Florida, I was in Texas, and it was going to be hours before an official party could get there in Blues. I made the call to just call her, because she was in a panic, calling the squadron, right? So there was just something that I had learned, is the ability to write some stuff down, put it in a coherent, logical thing. Maybe I would hit that point, maybe I wouldn't. But it kept me grounded when there was just a lot of emotion and things to say. Like, 'cause sometimes you get in that moment, you're like, it's really hard to deal with grief. What should I say? And you might blank. And that's where I think writing things down helps. I mean, you guys know, I wrote out my thoughts for the DUI. I don't like to go scripted like that. But on Zoom, I can't read an all-call room. I can't walk around. I can't look at Jeff Asper and see if he's paying attention or not. But, it's too hard to scroll while you're talking. But you have that feel in an all-call. So I just wrote it out because I didn't want to mess it up. And I knew at some points I could ad-lib. I'm glad he's paying attention. At some points I was going to stick to the script, right? To make sure I didn't use a name or give away something legally that I'm compelled to do as a commander. So those just examples where writing can help you. All right. That was good.
All right, I'm going to shift gears here real quick. So there's always a lot of, I don't know if I want to use the word fear, but trepidation, misunderstanding, misperception about deployments, how those are selected, how they come down. And And I've seen people drop deployments, and you start seeing the wheels turn. Why me? How can I get out of this? So in the OPD, we tried to push, the inevitability of it, the fairness of it in the squadron. What have you seen, and what advice can you offer to people, especially those who haven't had to deploy?
Yeah, wrong button there. So I think this is a great question, especially for OPD. So I would say I'm probably a little idealistic, and so don't take this too like the old man's out to bat with his mustache. But I do think every officer should want to deploy at one point in their time as an officer, right? And if you have that mentality to say, hey, I'm going to go serve my country in a combat sort of way and do something that's going to really put me out of my comfort zone, and you prepare yourself, and you can say that you've deployed to a combat environment, and not just with a 3-hour ground time or 7-hour ground time, and you go work with the Army or the Marines or go work in an air operations center, you're going to gain some valuable experience that will make you empathize as a leader and say, I've been there and I've done that. And not in a coarse kind of uncaring way, I'm sad your dog died, I had a great dog too. But you can really say, wow, I understand what that's like, and I really know how that separation feels, and missing a birthday or the stress between you and your spouse, it makes you a better leader, right? So that would be my like opening salvo of, hey, deployments, I think we probably don't do a good enough job of saying everyone should have that experience because there's value in that experience. Now, I'm aware that not all deployments are created equal, and some of these could suck that kind of philosophical second lieutenant optimism out, right? And you're pushing the same Excel spreadsheet over and over and over, and you're nowhere near contributing to something of value. So I do acknowledge that, but I think the Air Force is moving in the right direction. We moved an AOC to Shaw. We've done some things to make this process better, specifically to the squadron now. So that's kind of like the big picture, my view of taking this. Now say, hey, do it when the timing's right for you. And the sooner you take advantage of when the timing is right for you, whether that's family planning, whether that's like I'm about to get married, or I'm a single person and it doesn't matter. Take advantage. For me, I got to C-21s. When did I get there? I don't know, it was the fall. And they're like, hey, we need someone to deploy over Christmas. And I raised my hand. I'm like, I will go. I'm a brand new first pilot, but I've got no wife. I've not got no kids. I'm not going to miss Christmas morning. And they're like, thank you. Right. And I felt good about that. And it was a flying deployment. So I got to go fly around, LED'd a lot. I think I still have the record from the D to OBBI as far as how quick I can get there, but that's a different story. You know what I mean? And then I got to Dover in 06, and it was during the B model kind of AMP issue where we had Legacy. My dollar ride was on a Legacy B, and then everything else was an AMP. But you had to go through the AMP differences, and there was this wait. And they're like, hey, there's this deployment with the Army. And I'm like, I'll go. Right. So I was on a joint task force doing PSYOPs with the Army in Afghanistan and Iraq. And again, I learned from that. I learned from the other services. So, but back to the core of your question, we have this thing called a dossier. We just named it that for fun, but it's an Excel spreadsheet. And it's got everyone's deployments. And we track who's deployed, when the last time they deployed, and by kind of rank, right? So captains, who's hot, if you will, majors, who's hot, 05s, who's hot, lieutenants, not to worry, I think. So unless we're going to all out war, then all bets are off. So that's the logic. And we say, hey, we want you to be an AC first, right? I mean, that doesn't always work out, but that's kind of the ideal. We value that time to get you there, but it doesn't always work. And we try to consider family. For me, it's a huge issue. I want to make sure that the timing's right for you and your family. And some of the deployments I think are good deployments and some are not so good. And I understand that and I empathize with that. And we fight back where we can. I mean, we've sent emails to that 1-star and the Aircrew Crisis Task Force saying this is BS. We've done some other things to kind of shed these deployments. Part of the strategy for the tactics deployments in Europe is to keep us at a high number. So when I first got in the seat, we didn't have a lot of deployments, and I was like, yes, I'm not going to volunteer anyone. And then they're like, hey, Travis, 22nd, you guys are the lowest for deployments, and we're going to send, here's a 9-monther to wherever. And so by having a couple people constantly deployed into Germany or wherever, that kind of shows our numbers is higher. And so we're not the first outstanding target line of sight that the headquarters will see. Right. So, Cosmo, did I hit everything that I should talk about there?
Would you mind touching on how, even though we're enablers and we can spend up to 200 plus days a year gone, that still doesn't count towards a deployment, but it can count towards your overseas timeline, and just kind of talk about what delineates us from, say, KC-10 unit that deploys for 2 to 4 months or something like that.
Yeah. And so probably what the difference is, and this is just kind of fairy dust magic, is there's something called CED orders. I don't even have the acronym in my head. Does anyone know what they stand for? No, I don't know. Anyhow, CED orders is usually a non-flying deployment for us in C5s. And that is where you get the credit for deployment. And right now there's a policy that says if you deploy on CED orders, I think it's 45 days or more, you get credit for that deployment, and you're protected from redeploying for, I don't remember what the dwell is, but you're protected for some period of time, a couple of years, I think, from having to deploy again, right? So in your mind, if you're thinking through, hey, I've never deployed, should I deploy? You should find a deployment that generates CED orders, contingency exercise deployment orders. Thanks, Google and the team. But that is what you need to do to kind of get credit for that deployment, right? And so C5 Squadron, because we're strategic airlift and we're constantly moving, some units will deploy, like a 17 or a KC-10, they go to Al Dhafra. They can be put on CED orders and get credit. They're on a flying deployment. Like when I did Learjets, I think I was on CED orders, but I was flying, right? Because I was in AFCENT that whole time. And that's usually, for a flyer, that's the best of both worlds, right? You're getting your deployment credit and you're doing your primary craft. So that your say-do gap is aligned or very small. Where I think that say-do gap will open up some is if you go do a deployment and it's not directly related to maybe a flying mission. You could go to Bagram and do some great stuff, and it's related to the mission there, which I would find value in that. It's when you go to a deployment and you're like, well, this really touched the mission or not. That's where I think some people get salty, maybe is the word that comes to mind.
So
Does that answer your question?
Just to expand on Joey's point there, since, I mean, off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure C5s are the only gray tails that don't have a flying deployment. And like you said, when they're on their flying deployments, they get CED orders, so they get that credit. Is there a line of attack to AMC to ever get C5? Because, like, recognizing that C5s are a unique airframe that don't have flying deployments, is there a line of attack where we could get either all of our days or a certain percentage of our days TDY to credit towards some sort of deployment like counter?
Yeah, is there a line of attack or line of effort right now? Not that I'm aware of. But certainly I think it's a conversation that we've had with some of the senior leaders, especially when deployments come up. Because I will tell you, this is what the commanders will kind of butt heads about. And I even last night I got a comment on my work phone about C5s not deploying, and to which I said, that's because we take the 9 flying, but I zinged them right back. But you're right, it's probably not equal in the system, and we could probably do a better job of working that. it's going to be tough to make that inroad into the bureaucracy, but it's something we can get after for sure.
Something I will say is the quality of life that I've seen just with splitting up the deployments the way we have, doing 2 or 3 months apiece, is an immense difference from when I first came in, because you would see the soul get sucked from people's eyes as they found out they were going to do a 6-month or to the deed or something like that, especially if it was just before they were supposed to start upgrading or just after they started their upgrade or finished their upgrade. Especially for those heavy flyers who are gone a lot, they start slowing down because they get into a different job, and then boom, they're gone for 6 months. So that's been at least, I think, a step in the right direction, kind of talking about what Jeff was asking. It might not be the right way to address the problem, but at least it's putting a Band-Aid on it. And that's just from my time in this community over the past 5-6 years.
I'll agree with that. Having done a ton of 3-month deployments, 3 months is just not enough to really like hate your life or miss a ton of things or anything. By the time you're kind of getting kind of annoyed and wanting to come home, it's time to come home. So 3 months are always been, and even if you're in a crappy location, 3 months is fine.
Sir, do you know if they've been talking about this for years, about changing the short tour return date from 45 days to 90 days? But I've been hearing a lot about it lately. Do you know if that'll continue to where it's still the 45-day cutoff, to where we can keep doing these 2 to 3 months, splitting in half? Or do you see it changing to 90 days to where maybe we aren't able to do that anymore?
I've heard the rumors too, and I don't know. I would not be surprised if it goes to 90 days. But I don't know. I don't have any certainty, and I don't want to give any false expectations on that one, to be honest. Here, guys, just to add perspective, we approach this from a very math-centric kind of point of view. The Army, right? I mean, they're a different service, but you got to think of the joint fight. If you care about America and the joint fight, when we say 3 months, they'll scowl, because 3 months is about as long as it takes you to get warmed up, right? If you're in a complicated deployment, think about how long you PCS to a new duty station. How long before you're effective? Day one? I mean, you're walking around, you don't know where things are at. You're trying to find the sim building. Where the hell's the armpit? Right? So the same goes for deployment when you're adjusting and you're learning the new terrain. And oh, by the way, you're in combat, right? So just keep the perspective. And I'm not making a counter argument. I'm just saying the other services value some time, because what if relationship building is part of your job? How do you build a relationship in 3 months if you're working with the Afghans or something like that? So those are just, again, from a joint force perspective, think through the value of the whole joint force going, hey, I might need you for more than 3 months, because you really do bring value, but it takes you 3 months to get to know the people in the system to make a difference. So just a thought.
One last question with this topic. I was almost put on a 3-month TDY as an augmentee to the AOC in Korea, but it wasn't going to be on CED orders or count as a deployment. How often do things like that come around? And would you even say, I mean, I know fair is the wrong word to put it, but how would you say that ties into the mix of things in terms of you being considered for deployment after you're gone for 90 days, call it, on something that wasn't on CED orders?
Yeah, so that's one of the things, to quote Family Guy, that really grinds my gears, right? If you're gonna go deploy somewhere like that, that's where immediately I would pick up the phone and call. I would call Gus first, just at the group, so that I'd use a chain of command, and then I'd be like, no, I'm going right direct to AMC, and be like, this is BS, right? We're gonna put someone there. Let's change these to CED orders. And we need time to do that. So here, time is the critical. They can't do that shit overnight. So if we have the time, my first instinct here is to say, let's make this a CED order thing. And this is where you got to stop doing stupid, right? This is where the Air Force can do better. And this is where it takes commanders and group commanders and wing commanders to say, no, I'm not going to send a guy to Korea for 3 months and not give him credit. That is BS, right? So that's step one, to make sure that we are closing that say-do gap and saying, hey, if you're going to go do something like that, let's do it. There's always the big debate with us is, do we do CED order for stage managers or do we not? Because when you do CED orders, what don't you get? Maybe full per diem, right? Because then you go down to like whatever the money is. And so now half the crews are like, oh, I want full per diem, man. And then some of the people are like, I want CED credit. Like, have your cake and eat it too. There are these gotchas. But I'm tracking the line of thought there. In my book, yeah, I would give it credit. Like, as a commander, we have the ability to use some gray area judgment. And so for me, I would say, like, I know we did some of the stuff when Korea first kicked off. People went to Hawaii. Okay, I got it. Hawaii is probably not a harsh location, but if you're away from your family, the stresses are you're away from your family, right? For me, it's all about aligning the system to reflect what we value. And that to me would be kind of deployment credit.
We got a good question from Stuart Gress here. How do you know how hot you are on the involuntary deployment list? When should you start exploring voluntary ones, have more control? I'm just going to make a quick plug. I have a meeting I got to leave the house for at 11, so I'm just going to fire this off. So when it comes to 365s, basically when somebody drops an involuntary 365, it's kind of big news and you hear about it. So in your peer and rank group, when you hear someone drops one, kind of figure out what their short tour return date was, and you just kind of compare yours to theirs. I think for my year group, lieutenant colonel types, I think they're still working in 2001, 2002. So you can kind of figure the closer you are to that, the higher you're getting on that list. As far as how hot you are for just dropping a regular deployment, we do keep a spreadsheet at the chief pilot office, so you can kind of see compared to your peers based on rank and year group, who's deployed, who hasn't deployed, and when their last deployment was, if any. And we have that information, so we can give you a bit of a snapshot if you want to talk about that. I'm going to head out, and I'm going to pass kind of the moderation over to Jeff Asper, assistant to the chief pilot. But before I go, I just wanted to say thank you, Colonel Pollock, for coming out. Thanks for everyone talking, listening. We'll have another exciting video for you next week. Please leave feedback because we don't get any feedback. So please leave feedback. And if there's nothing else, that's all I got. Hang out as long as you like, and I appreciate it. We'll see you.
Cool. Well, so I guess for Stuart, since I kind of do that spreadsheet a lot of times, just kind of like a good rule of thumb for the 12 and 13ers. If you've ever deployed, you're probably going to be pretty far down that list. So unless you're like a CONUS or like a Ramstein C21 or FATE type or something like that, then don't worry too much about it.
Okay. Yeah, I was mainly wondering for later in the career, but those are good strategies, so thank you.
Yeah, I can't really, I don't know about later, but for now, yeah, you were super far down, and the rest of the RPA dudes were super far down that list. Cool.
There is an office at AFPC that handles 365s. You can ask for their number and call them, and they will tell you where you are on the list. That's my also understanding, right? Or the assignments officer. We're going to try to get Derek Patrick, our C5 assignments officer, on a Zoom here in the next month. And that's a fair question to ask that guy. It's like, where am I on the deployment list? And he sits not too far from that 365 dude. And they can kind of work out when and where life planning, as you know, like myself, for instance, I am probably getting hot for a 365. So I'm sure I'm somewhere on that list. And that's something that I'll have a conversation about.
Cool. Anything else for deployments? Anybody got any questions, or should we move on to something else? Cool. I got a couple like hip pocket ones, but if anybody has anything they want to bring up, now's a good time.
Hey, I got a question. It's Matt Franchette. As far as like looking into career paths, I know people talk about like the road show and whatnot. Is there anywhere like we can go to like kind of explore options out there, like just on our own, that sort of thing?
So what do you mean by career paths, though? I'm just curious.
I mean, things like that don't get really talked about outside. I mean, like FAO jobs, obviously people talk about that sort of thing, or like working at the Pentagon, or staff tours, or things that like we wouldn't really hear about unless we like went to a roadshow like talk type of thing. Like if we're just like looking to kind of expand maybe things we wouldn't really know about unless we went to the roadshow, I guess.
And what roadshow are you referring to? I'm
Don't they
AFPC's roadshow or what's that?
Yeah, though I think he's talking about the one that A1K does, is they go to base, talk about personnel, talent management, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily talk about deep dives into like this is what staff at Pentagon is like, right? So probably the first thing I would say is let's get a list of the career choices, things that you're interested in, and really the chief pilot office is going to be able to do the homework for you and kind of get you a real well-researched deep answer. The A1KB roadshow, I've been to it several times. They talk about like IDE and promotion rates and what's going on in the math, but they don't tell you the difference between HAF and joint staff at the Pentagon and what the job opportunities are. Because one thing I would say, and Kramer kind of hinted at it in his OPD session, is you shouldn't view your career in terms of rank, right? Rank is really just a level of responsibility. You should see yourself, this is just my personal take, right? So take it or leave it, is what kind of duty or job do you want to go do? What speaks to you? What resonates to you? If you want to be in the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff CAG and you want to hand him advice on what to do when North Korea pops a nuke and you find that interesting, then you think to yourself, how do I get to that kind of duty? If you want to be on the National Security Council and be involved in the White House decision-making process, then you got to think in terms of what is the best preparation to do something like that. Conversely, if that makes you sick to your stomach and you're like, I just want to fly, then you got to think about what are the opportunities to cross-train to different airframes, or you keep doing that in the Air Force. And you've seen like old pyramids, and I think they're revamping it to like a trapezoid. I don't even know, because it's not everyone wants to be the chief of staff of the Air Force anymore. But there are different tools out there, and I think Heather's talking about some of the MyPeer links that are out there to show you. But probably the best way to do this is to get those tools and then get someone who's been in that job to talk about it. Because without the context, I can tell you all day long the pros and cons of being a planner on a combatant command in a joint environment. We could do a 4-hour session on that alone. What's really cool about it, what I learned is a life skill, and what sucked, right? Because you're in a skiff all day. So if you use your phone to take notes, how do you do that in a skiff? You got to use a notebook. And then that notebook can never leave, right? But these are all the things that you'll kind of explore through a deep dive. So I think that's a great topic to say, hey, chief pilots, I want to learn more about the Olmstead program, or I want to learn more about this White House fellowship or legislative liaison, or someone that has done an exchange program with Canada or something like that, right? What are the opportunities out there, and how do you go find those? Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Just wanted to see just for like career progression and long-term planning. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, career progression, number one thing, like everyone says, is do well, become an instructor, do things for the right reasons that resonate with you, right? And as you mature, then we can talk about, hey, now it's time to go broaden yourself. But you got to get that step right? You got to be an instructor, and you got to be credible, and you got to do it for the right reasons. And you got to have a little bit of leadership, right? So that's where a flight commander is valuable in leading a team. And we have some incredible flight commanders and, you know, chiefs of different programs that are showing true leadership, and how leadership and credibility are dovetailed and go hand to hand. Okay.
Matt, I'll just throw out there too. I know Heather posted the link to the MyPers thing. I think the easiest thing to look for if you're interested in like a wide variety, like just what's out there in the Air Force, is go to the personnel services delivery memorandums. People refer to them as PSDMs, right? And you can just kind of scroll through, and it has all the ones that have ever come out for the past 3 years. And that's where you'll see like the requirements to go to test pilot school and stuff like that. So if you're bored and are just looking, it's got all the FAO stuff. And there's some stuff you have to pick your way through, because that's where they also put out like promotion lists and things like that. But basically any program that's out there available that's kind of unique for the Air Force, there's a PSDM listed for it on MyPers. And Heather, to answer your question, if you just go to the MyPers homepage, I'm on it right now. On the MyPers homepage, under the I would like to, there's a view PSDM listing. So it should be right on the first page as soon as you log in, and that should have everything.
And one other quick note on that is the way the MyPers system works, and the PSDM drops, and then it goes to the like wing, and then it gets to the group and to the squadron, and then by the time it gets to you, it's going to be an impossibly short timeline to build what typically is like a pretty extensive package. So doing your homework before, kind of getting your stuff lined up a year in advance before you hit the button on the application, because if you wait until that like MyPers generated email, you'll never get it done. So it's definitely good to snoop on last year's stuff, because it never really changes much from year to year. But it's some of those packages have extensive requirements.
Thanks, everyone.
Go ahead, Lily.
Hi. So this kind of pertains to this topic, but let's say that you have an idea what you want your next assignment to be, or you're interested in that assignment, and a slot opens up. How would you know if it's available, or it recently became available, or they're not looking to have people for that assignment for like another year kind of thing?
Yeah, so other people can chime in here, but two thoughts immediately come to mind. One, always have a commander with the chief pilot, or a conversation with the chief pilot, and then the chief pilot will talk to me, right? And then also every officer is welcome to get on my calendar and we talk career aspirations at some point. I mean, that should be a foregone kind of comment. Like you should all sit down with the commander at some point and talk about what you want to do, right? But the chief pilot is the number one. He's got a spreadsheet, and in there he updates what your career aspirations are. Honestly, that's probably the best way. Now, there's also talent marketplace, right? There's a system, this idea of talent management, where you can go in and see what jobs are available. So if you have a specific assignment in mind, you can kind of establish a pattern of when does that assignment have opportunities opening up that you can apply for. So those are probably the two avenues to talk about it. So just to add a little more transparency, every week, every Tuesday morning, I have a telecon with Dover's commander and the assignment officer. And what we do is we take the people on the VML, so the vulnerability to move list, which you get put on after 2 years time on station, roughly. Is it 2 or 3 years? I don't remember. But once you're on the VML, we're in a heavy discussion about, hey, what do we want to do with this person? And just because you're on the VML doesn't mean you're moving, right? So don't panic. But that's kind of the tier of people that you're considering. My personal preference is to work assignments 1 year out, which is usually not the Air Force norm. but we've had a lot of success working things about a year out. So for a C5 baby, expect to be on station 4 years. The going rate for a C5 baby is 4 years. But why does that matter? Well, you should become an instructor, hopefully, if you can in 4 years. So boom, that you have that credibility. And then so a year out, so at the 3-year point, you should definitely be talking to the commander. And every week, I'm in that meeting. So if someone says, oh my God, I want a Gulfstream to Hawaii, and that becomes available, I know that ahead of time, or I have access to the spreadsheet at my fingertips, assuming the share drives aren't down. I can communicate that directly to the assignments officer. Rarely there's no assignment worked where the commander and the assignment officer is not working hand in hand, right? So that's really how that goes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and throw in a shameless plug for ribbon charts on behalf of Reineman and Colonel Kramer. So the ribbon charts, yeah, they do seem kind of creepy and they can be a little bit confusing, but feel free to update them at any time. You guys can always like email us a new one, and if you do CC both of us, I'll throw it in your folder. If you ever want to talk about it though, it would definitely behoove you to like essentially schedule an appointment with the chief pilot and say like, hey sir, I want to talk about my ribbon chart. And then that way he'll take time to look at it. Maybe it might even only be 10 minutes before you get there, but at least it's not like, hey, I want to talk about this right now. Let's do it. And then you're going to catch him by surprise and, you know, it's not going to go very far. And the other cool thing, there's like that big open part at the bottom on the ribbon charts. Feel free to put like, I have questions about FAO. I'm interested in weird schools. I want to go fly things behind the green door. Whatever, like, just throw that stuff up there if you're curious. I mean, it's not going to hurt. It's not like an official AFPC form that's putting your name on a list somewhere. It's just a good place to add kind of questions and see what you want to do with your life. Is there any like questions or feedback on the ribbon chart right now, other than it's kind of tough to manipulate? Millie's interested in weird schools. Sir, do you know about any other weird schools that you can tell us, guide us on? Because I don't know of any.
I wanted to one up Bateman and say I have a shake too. So, okay, weird schools. Like, do you have an example? Because that just makes it easier.
No, it was more of a joke. He said if you are interested in weird schools, to make sure to write that on the bottom of your ribbon chart. So,
like Hogwarts, underwater basket weaving, you know, the like.
So, I just a real quick plug for schools, right? Probably the first opportunity you're going to get is IDE, right? Intermediate developmental education. There's some crazy fellowships out there. There's some pretty standard schools, like, you know, going to Alabama. But what I would do is there's a PSDM, like Joel mentioned, that says, here are all the fellowships available. And it's really interesting to go and read through those fellowships and say, hey, this is something I'm interested in. And then you take your ribbon chart, which is why it's important, and you figure out when are your looks for schools. There's usually a sweet spot between your second and third look for IDE now. And I hear there's a fourth look coming, so more to follow on that. But figure out where you're going to be on your second and third look for school, and then do the backwards planning to say, hey, if I'm really interested in going to a weird school, if that's how we phrase it, or a fellowship, or you want to go to the Army War College or what have you, you know, do the backwards math, figure out where you're going to be on your second and third look, and make sure you're well positioned and you have all the right credentials that you need to be competitive for that school. Some take a GRE, so you'd want to have taken that ahead of time. For instance, I'm going to a fellowship for SDE at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University in Boston, right? It was my number 2 pick. Harvard was 1. I didn't get Harvard, but this was 2. I get cross-registration at Harvard and MIT for the year. So for the whole year, I get to go to classes at Harvard, I get to go to classes at MIT, and I get to go to classes at Tufts. I audit them. I don't have to do a single paper, right? I get to read. I get to do a little bit of writing. I get to run, and I don't. The reason they want fellows there is because when you go to the John F. K. School of Government and some 25-year-old grad student says, "Is that really what the DoD bureaucracy is like?" I can be like, "Let me tell you the difference between OSD and Joint Staff and how political it gets." Right? I mean, did you guys see the spat? It wasn't a spat, but just the difference between the Secretary of Defense and the chairman on haircuts the other day? I didn't put that one on Twitter because it's kind of, but I mean, that in itself is just one friction point example. So you sit in these classes with these rock stars and former SecDefs come in. I'm sure, former chiefs of staff will come in and you learn with them for a year. So that's just an example of a weird school that's awesome. And I get to go live in Boston for that year with the family and just kind of relax. So, and reflect really is what I hope to do.
Cool. The other two like kind of hip pocket questions I had were more conversation starters, so probably better for the beginning of the discussion. So I don't really have anything left for this talk. So if there's anything to the crowd, now's a good time to bring it up, or either we can wrap it up and call it a day.
There may be just a quick question for me being kind of the outsider. Nothing specific, but do you think it's beneficial for me to have these conversations with the 22nd commander as far as ribbon charts and what I want to do, and you speak to the FSS commander, or should I be speaking straight to FSS commander about these things?
I think you should let me know that you're going to get on the FSS commander's calendar and let me know, like if you have a ribbon chart, shoot it to me. And then I'll shoot Nate a note saying, hey, Fry is just crushing it in our squadron. The whole team is way better for it. But as a functional, he's going to understand your career path much better than I would. And so I will be the ammo to back up and kind of get him kind of focused. But he's the one who'll work your assignment and do those things. So I think you sit down with him for sure.
Right, you'll just be my hype man in the back.
All right, anybody else? Presnell, what do you got? What are you thinking about?
I mean, I'm being selfish. I'm just thinking about me personally, timeline stuff and IDE timing.
So let me just say that word. He said selfish. He's not being selfish. That service before self, if we want to get on core values, I'm happy to get on the discussion. But doing something, and this is why my John Boyd post, there's nothing wrong with doing something that you want to do. That is absolutely what you should be doing. If you speak German and you want to go to Germany and that's in your interest and you want to serve your country, that's not selfish. Selfish is backstabbing a friend to get an advantage over them. That would be selfish, right? So the other thing that people say, sir, you're really busy, so I don't want to talk about it. That is also BS, right? My job is to talk to all of you about what you want to do. That's my priority. So Presnell is not being selfish. He's doing what he should be doing and saying, how are we going to get Chewie to Germany or Europe? Because that's what he wants to do, and he wants to stay flying, right? So that's not selfish. You guys should all have that impulse to do what you're passionate about because it makes you that much better at it. And I'm missing some good chats, it looks like. What's going on up here?
They're saying I'm looking smaller than normal, sir.
Oh. It's those runs on Strava and you're crushing it.
I am running a lot, but I do have a home gym. Overdue on Drew Bateman. Oh, that hurts. That hurts.
What question do you got, Presnell? I saw your brain thinking there. So.
No, I don't have a big question. I was actually pulling up the FAO document right now. I was going to talk to Guanch after that. I can send it to him if he's interested in that. There's a pretty big guidance. It's about 100 pages long of all the FAO stuff and all the different IDEs I can count for that will allow you to become a FAO. And I was just trying to pull that up and get some of that information for them. That's what I was doing kind of in the background.
Cool. Good leadership. Thanks for doing that. See, that's not selfish. All right. Anyone else got anything? I don't want to go long because I could do this all day, as you guys can tell. But you guys probably have like napping and you know, I don't know what else to do. So I'm sensitive to your schedules as well. I don't want to interrupt nap time. Any other questions though? I love this stuff. So please, if you have a question, ask. If you have that, like,
Sir, is Lieutenant Park, I have a question.
yeah, man, go. I can't
Sir,
see
I know
you though.
you're.
Where are you?
Oh, 1 moment, sir. 1 second. Do you see me?
Let me see. Oh, I got you.
Yes, sir. I know you're busy, but I want to ask you this. I know we're gonna have a chain of command in end of May, and the LEAP program will be opening for application on the 1st of May. And I was wondering if you're able to fill out the endorsement form for the applicant to apply for the LEAP this year, sir.
Yes, absolutely. Language Enabled Airman Program, LEAP, right? So
Yes,
you
sir.
get a tutor languages on crack with some awesome software, and then you get to go do a language immersion. The answer is a resounding yes. Anyone who wants to do LEAP, it's gotten more competitive over the years. I just said I wanted to do it, and they said, come do it. But yeah, certainly, if you want to do LEAP, don't let the change of command dates slow any of you from applying for anything.
And Park, to speak on that, dude, do it now before it's too late, because I made a mistake and I kept pushing it off and waiting until later, not really realizing that they really aim for younger people, so that way they can grow them. So definitely apply sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and here's my another concern that since my dollar ride in January, haven't really able to fly mission despite all my trying to appeal schedulers. So I haven't really had much chance to fly missions since my dollar ride in January, and applying for the LEAP and all this stuff and do 38 TDYs to Korea to go to language school and come back, do the mentorship, or possibly get another like side job or TDY that's involved with LEAP. Will it slow my progression as a pilot in the long term or until I become an AC? Because I feel like I'm pretty behind the power curve as far as progression as a co-pilot.
No, because you can once you're in LEAP, you can put it on hold for operational reasons. So get into LEAP and then say, I got to focus on being a good pilot, and then do what you need to do to have credibility first in the jet. But now that you're in, you can say, hey, in a year, I'll be ready to rock full time, or I need 6 months break. So, and as your commander, we'll be happy to support that. So I would say apply to LEAP, get in, and if you need to take a pause because now you're on some missions, that's your priority though. Just don't, kind of like Cosmo said at the beginning, is you need to stay focused on flying first. But there's nothing wrong with getting your foot in the door and saying, hey, I'm in LEAP, but I might need some time here because I'm in an upgrade, right? You might be able to do some LEAP on the side, but you enter a formal upgrade, you pause LEAP, and flying is your focus.
Thanks, sir.
All right, I know we're coming up on nap time, so any other questions? I know Jeff's gonna take a nap. I can tell he's
No, I got my skateboard's calling my name, so I got to eat lunch and go from afternoon skateboard.
Maybe we should figure out like smoothie recipes and share like quarantine smoothies or whatever else you guys are up to. I'm interested.
I've been making some killer cocktails too.
Yeah, as long as you don't drink and drive, I don't care. Okay.
Too soon.
Too soon? Yeah. Anybody else? Stay healthy. I would say don't just drink. That's bad, guys. Like, be real. go on runs, eat healthy food like Heather is. I think she's got strawberries there, or I'm not, some type of berry. Oh, is that cute? I don't know.
Hey, so we got a question from Ro. Ro Castaneda is asking, what's your favorite podcast? And I guess like something we should listen to right now.
Oh man, that could be a whole session in itself. Again, I really want to have the emotional intelligence to not go Hollygog Wild West on this. Favorite podcast, man, you got. I almost have them by category. Like, I'd have to break them out. Okay, so the Knowledge Project is really at the top of the list, and they have some really good. Some of you can pick them by category, so don't think you have to go by every one. There's some leadership ones. There's some relationship ones. But the Knowledge Project, to me, is pretty impressive. The Learning Leader on leadership has been invaluable to me. War on the Rocks, their writing is actually better online, to be honest. But I really like their format where you get to, some cocktails and you get some smart people in a room and you just kind of pontificate on a certain subject. That's where the think and drink kind of idea came to me for doing happy hours. And maybe we should do an OPD in the afternoon and do a happy hour if you guys want. Again, I balance alcohol, not alcohol, because that's a concern. But that to me is interesting. Jocko Willink, I'll from time to time listen to his. They can be sometimes a little long. And sometimes not on the topic that I'm interested in, but he always has a good intro. I do like how he sets up some of his conversations. Let me just look at my podcast because I have so many. What about you guys? What stands out?
I mean, I'll second War on the Rocks. That's what got me into my master's class that I'm taking now for international relations and security. So definitely go check that one out if you haven't before.
Yeah.
Miko Morales has a podcast called The Gab.
Yeah.
I highly recommend.
Yeah. The Gab. I'm waiting to get asked to be a speaker on the Gab. I'm just waiting. I got 45 days to go, but Dashner made the list. Revisionist history. Yes, I saw that. I think we did OPD last year on revisionist history with Malcolm Gladwell. Were you guys a part of that? We thought about how you challenge assumptions and think critically when he was doing the LSAT. That was a great podcast, I thought. I have all sorts. I've got a hockey podcast. I've got some Eastern European, Russia-centric ones. Harvard Business Review. I have a subscription to Harvard Business Review. It's expensive, but it's well worth it if you're really into leadership and business. So I listen to their podcast as well. TED Radio Hour. We should probably get a list together by topic and come up with here's the Double Deuce podcast ideas. Here's some finance ones. Here's some strategy. Here's leadership. Here's relationship. That'd be cool. I'm missing all the chats, and you guys probably have private chats going. All right. What else? Once again, we're going long, but you guys are helping me. This is my therapy. Thank you. Sparky, you're awfully quiet, bro.
I speak in enough meetings throughout the day. I figured I'd just listen today.
Oh, I thought you were in nap time already. All right. Anybody else?
Hey, sir. Just want to introduce myself. I'm Patrick Regan. I just got here on Sunday night. I'm in processing as much as I can. I'm excited to work with everybody and just wanted to say hi. Judging by these chats, I think I'm going to like everyone a lot. I see some familiar faces from the schoolhouse, so I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, dude, super happy to have you. Glad you made it out here safely, and welcome to what I think is the best team in the world right now. So we're happy to have you. All right, so anyone else have a question? Sorry. I want to make sure I don't leave anyone out. I know you're all just chatting and laughing, but that's cool too. Podolsky, do you have a question? I can pick on Wisconsin.
Yeah, I saw, not necessarily for me, but I saw a previous one. There was a question about not necessarily the C5 babies, but the guys who are cross-flowing, the RPA guys who are coming in, how long they should expect to be here. But not really me thing, but something that I saw before.
Yeah. So I think it is a little more contextual, but I would still say close to 4 years, right? Because you're going to need the time to establish yourself. And I think everyone realizes if you're coming from ACC to AMC or something like that, that it's okay to take some time to get established. Yeah, so I would say 3 years of the min, but I would target 4, especially with below the zone and everything else that's going on. I think there's time and no rush. All right, guys, I'll end with this. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the honesty. I think it's important for officers to come together from time to time and talk about real issues, and that makes us better. Chatham House rules always apply, so I'm happy to talk about controversial issues. It's a little harder in Zoom because you always have this feeling that you could get hacked and then that could get out there. But I trust every one of you inherently, so I'm happy to have really tough conversations about what's going on in the world, even in our squadron. That's what the officers are about. You guys are the leaders of the team. Keep growing, stay active, stay healthy in this environment, and that's all I got. So I really appreciate the time. Here's Boyd's book. If you haven't read this one, that's to be or to do. I'll tell you a quick war story just because I think it shows a little bit of vulnerability that you guys can probably relate to. I was an exec at C-21s. I was probably still a lieutenant, maybe just a brand new captain. And my commander then, who I model a lot of how I command based on him, you guys still with me? Sorry, my screen blacked for a second. He told me this whole do something or be somebody. And be somebody, you're just this careerist, you're backstabbing, you do something, you stay true to yourself, right? And I took it kind of as a dichotomy. You could always do one or the other. And I've since learned that it's okay to meet milestones and make sure you promote, but you always do it for the right reasons, right? So 90% do something and 10% sometimes you got to just, do something in correspondence or something like that. Anyhow, we're at a dining out. We'd organized it. And you know how you do like the point of order things and like you were going to the grog bowl? Maybe I shouldn't tell this story now I think about it. To care about these topics and to have fun with them. And that's a really exciting thing to do. So again, thanks for the attention today. I really did edit that story because it was not quite that pretty, but you guys have a fun nap and I'm going to drink this and go for a run. See ya. Oh yeah, and thank you for putting this together. If I didn't say that, you guys, to both Chief Pilot Office, thank you. This is awesome.
See ya.